This meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. We acknowledge, making a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the Nakusp area have a rich Indigenous history and acknowledge the Earl Lakes Select people within whose traditional lands we are meeting today. And adoption of the agenda. Oh, is there any introduction of late items?
Yes.
Adoption agenda recommendations that the agenda of the March 24th, 2025 regular meeting be adopted as presented. Have a motion, please. Come up forward. Councillor McLaren, seconded Councillor Canoisan. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Adoption of the minutes, the regular council 10th March 2025. Regular meeting be adopted as presented. Have a motion, please. Councillor Edwards, seconded Councillor Huff. Questions? All in favor? Carried. No presentations. Hearings. Unfinished business. So the CFO will be speaking on this. Recommendation of the 2025 capital budget in the amount of $4,394,157 be approved as follows. General capital 1.884,935, water capital 674,250, sewer capital 1.380,416, Plus Springs capital 454,556. Can I have a motion to bring this forward? Councillor Cole.
I'll move them, but there's the number. The first number was different on the script or the agenda that I'm looking at. Yeah. It was 1.912435.
That is correct. It updated in the report, but not on the agenda.
Okay, so we'll amend that one. Amend it. Motion to amend that.
Well, I'll just move it.
Once we get it in. Okay. So can I have a second? Councillor Edwards. Okay. To the CFO, did you want to speak on this, or do you want to?
Sure, I can speak on it. Basically, we've added 6 additional capital items to the original budget that was brought forward in January. There's 2 that are in relation to this building. We got 15,000 for the gutter replacement and 13,000 for the gutter replacement and 15,000 for snow stops and roof repair. And then there's also wildfire trailer and pumps. That project is 100% funded through CBT, and that one's $75,000. The funding for the other 2 projects here are from fire reserves. And then we've got Arena Parks, added $20,000 to finish up the Sandy station, and that's basically just do a big paved pad for the trailers to pull up on. For water, there's an extra $100,000 for a UV disinfection system replacement. And then for hot springs, they added chemical controllers at a cost of $12,000. The chemical controllers, they've been working over the last 6 months or so, trying all of their options to get that right, and nothing's really worked. So that's why that was a late item there. It's kind of the last option to fix the system.
Any questions on the capital budget? Councillor McLaren.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just through the chair, I would just ask for I guess there's 3 items that are funded from reserves. The fire, well, 4, I guess, but the fire items, the Hot Springs chemical controllers, and the water treatment. And my question is how those fit into the long-term capital plan. Like, were those projected, or are those? So those are all just coming out of reserves and without being replaced for future consideration.
That's with the exception of the water.
Okay.
That one, that 100,000, is just happening sooner than anticipated due to obsolete parts, basically. So we can't do the maintenance anymore that's required. So it popped up. But the other ones, we had no reserves for this building, but we're starting those up this year. And then the hot springs, it's just coming from the hot spring surplus, so that wasn't planned.
So,
Sure, go ahead, Councilor McLaren.
okay, through the mayor. Okay, right. I was making the surplus. I guess my question is, because the water or the other two are large, well, water is the largest one. Is there a way to bridge that gap? Like, we didn't obviously change our operating budget to more contribution to reserves. Are we going to adjust for that next year?
We're so far, so for that one, we're just getting started this year.
Right.
So we could, the reality is to adjust for all of these things, we need to double taxes. Not for just these few ones, but for all of our reserve requirements, right? That's basically where we're at right now. So we're just going to keep chipping away at each year. Sustainable raises to continue to knock down that amount and get closer to where we need to be.
So Edwards, did you have any questions? Martin? That's it. Any further questions? Okay. Good. Two, a recommendation that the final operating budget is an amount of $6,715,795 be approved as follows. General operating, $4,153,855. Water, $718,230. Sewer, $626,460. Hot springs, $1,217,250. Bring that forward. Councilor McLaren, seconded. Councilor Up. CFO, you wish to speak on this?
Very few changes here. We have added in the revenue increases and the reserve transfer for the Centennial building. That was through and it's there. We got the tax increase in the regional district. And we added an additional expense for surveying costs. That's related to village land for those properties. Marina Parks, we just changed the funding of the recreation park position from surplus to COVID Safe Restart grants, since there's funding available up there for that. And the hot springs, we reallocated some labor expenses for contract services for grading parking areas. It remains the same. So the tax increase is still the original amount that was brought forward at the provisional budget meeting, 6.7%.
Questions on the operating budget?
I have some, but I don't know if anybody else wants to go first.
Go ahead. I got a couple. Go ahead.
Okay,
Go
thanks.
first, Councilor McLaren.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through the mayor, a few questions. Increased rental revenues. Have we agreed on new terms for the Centennial building tenants?
No, those are coming. Or shooting for that to come at the last meeting in April.
And that's the license of occupation agreement.
Okay, thanks. And just a question about the funding for the recreation clerk. We had a discussion about funding it a different way. Is that correct? And then have we changed it to this?
So we had talked about using funding it 1/3 through taxation and 2/3 through surplus. And then so rather than just using straight surplus, we're using the COVID grant for that 2/3. And then that keeps our surplus up higher, which can be used for anything. So it's basically coming from the same pot, because that money's all in the same pool. But makes it so that there's no restrictions on surplus.
Thanks, that's all I have.
Campground. Do we know, we put out a bid for applications to run a campground? And it's probably in the, it's probably in the capital budget. I forgot how much we're allotting for this year for upkeep. Was it 30,000? I couldn't remember what it was. We're putting in new electricals.
Closer to 40, I think it's 25, 35.
How many would we be installing? Will we be putting new updated ones, or this is an addition?
Additional ones, and the how many will depend a little bit. So the idea is to get a 400 amp service in there, and then looking at what the need is. So a 50 amp plug actually takes, I forget what the calculation is, but you can get 7 off a 400 amp service. So what does that tell you about it? It's not straight math. And it gets into the different phases of the electricity. But then if you only go with a 30 amp plug, you can get like twice as many as you think you're going to get extra. So it's not just a linear thing, but then people kind of want the 50 amp plugs now because they got bigger RVs and stuff like that. So still will be between 7 and 15.
Anyone else? Okay. Well, must have done a really good report. There's no questions. Thanks to the CFO and staff. And Marina, when was the date that we're having the meeting with Marianne? That was
April 9th.
April 9th. Oh. All right. No other questions?
Just one thing, just because it's going to be a short night. For context, we did our regional district budget last week, and it took us like 4.5 hours. And there were 27 motions on the agenda. So, great work, everybody.
Okay, Councilor Elliott.
I see that there's 30,000 allocated for marina repairs, and I'm wondering what that is, and are we going to do it this year?
Well, I'll pass it over to Kevin, but I'll say that just last year, it may not seem that a lot was done. However, an assessment study was done on the marina, which is important work to be done beforehand so that we know what needs to be prepared, what not. But
It's going to look an awful lot like an aluminum gangway.
Ooh.
For majority of that 30
Nice.
grand. And what doesn't go into there will look like either concrete patches or some bolt rails.
Yes. Yeah, it needs some TLC. Thank you.
And the muscle study's been done for the marina, right? That's done. Okay. Any other further questions? All in favor? Carried. Traffic, street, and sidewalk control. Recommendations that the reports, none. Motions arising from the reports, none. Bylaws, traffic, street, and sidewalk control bylaw, 747, 2025. Recommendations of the traffic, street, sidewalk control bylaw, 747, 2025 be given first and second readings. I have a motion to bring this forward. Councilor McLaren Cole, seconded Councilor Noyson. There's a lot here. To the CEO, do you wish to speak on any of these? Because we're not, to the CEO, I was looking for the one where there was RCMP input. Was that on the, in here?
that was on this bylaw, that's correct. So I'll say a very little, but generally speaking, any questions you have on it would be probably best pushed over to the Deputy Corporate Officer because she did the work on this bylaw. What I'll just say is that this bylaw was stemming from a bylaw from the 1990s that was pretty much impossible for us to even use anymore. So this is a new rendition of the bylaw. It is off to Ministry of Transportation for the review as well. And we're hoping that this is a much more effective tool in order to deal with streets and sidewalks and traffic type things. Some of the highlights are lowering the speed limit throughout the community to 40 from 50 kilometers an hour, unless areas where it's deemed 30 due to other reasons. And we actually have the ability to tow and ticket vehicles now, which, well, we do now, but it'll be a lot easier with this bylaw should the need ever arise.
Thank you. To the CAO, to the corporate office. So speed limits will be 40. And what about in parks, like the one straight down from here? This says parks, is that 30 all inside there? No, it always has been 24 hours a day.
It hasn't been 24 hours a day, but it's being changed to 24 hours a day.
And another one is RVs on Broadway are not allowed. So that's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
No park.
No parking. 2 hour limits, that's not parking.
That was existing. That was existing. We just never had signage.
Anyone else have questions on this? Councillor Canoisa?
I actually have quite a few questions, so if you want to. The 40 kilometers an hour, that's new, and I'm assuming signs through to staff, new signs will be posted, and I'm wondering if there's going to be a grace period while people adjust to the new speed limit.
That's up to the police. The moment a sign is posted, it's law.
Okay.
So there really isn't much of a grace period in any because it's, think of it this way, if you drive into a new community or a new place, you're expected to follow those signs as they are, right? But realistically, our police don't enforce the speed limit. They usually bring in other police to enforce the speed limit. So when that happens is when there might be some things.
Right. And will there be a lot of signs posted with the new speed limit so that people know it's changed? Will we be advertising that it's changing, new? And sometimes you'll see signs that say there's new rules around a certain area.
Yeah, the thought is we'll definitely be putting out information throughout the community through our different channels that we do. So, you've got your website, of course, social media, and the newsletter. Generally speaking, though, what you do is you have a sign when you come into town, and that sign will say that all speed limits are 40 kilometers an hour unless posted otherwise.
Thank you. 6.15, just let me get to there for a second. It's talking about, just wrote there, sorry. Page 13. 15, thank you. 113. I'm just wondering, I've written here, sorry. Maybe come back to me.
Would you like me to read it?
Yeah, sure. I just am having.
The person must not solicit or carry on any business, trade, or occupation on the highway within the village, not place any item for display or sale or exhibit merchandise of any nature upon the highway in the village, nor allow any tables, chairs for the use of customers to be placed on any highway in the village unless permitted to do so by a license issued by the village.
Thank you. And so the question is, does that include signage? Because it doesn't specify in that.
Don't see any. You could argue that carrying on a business, trade or occupation, but no, it doesn't explicitly state a sign.
And in 9.21, it talks about signs on sidewalks, but it doesn't talk about highways, and this one's talking about stuff on highways. So I'm just wondering if somewhere it shouldn't talk about signage.
Well, a sign, so a highway is, a highway actually includes the sidewalk as well.
Okay,
But yeah, you're right. So if it just states sidewalk, then that means you would not be able to place on a sidewalk. Sidewalk is differentiated. It's sort of pulled out of the subset of highway. Yeah, but I guess technically speaking, somebody could post a sign on the highway but you would probably run into a situation at that point where, I don't know, that could be something that we could always add to the bylaw.
I just think that we've had a number of conversations about signage being posted along highways, and was curious about that. So okay if I continue? Thank you. 7.4, letter I, 2-hour parking on Broadway Street only. So I think there was a letter submitted to us a while ago, and I was wondering if the 2-hour parking is wonderful, but if it shouldn't extend or couldn't extend to some of the side streets right just off of Broadway as well, since that area oftentimes is used for parking for business fronts as well.
That's up to council.
Comments? Councilor Blanchard?
Just a quick comment on that one, Mr. Mayor. I think there are some residential areas particularly on the south side of Broadway, and I don't believe they have parking on site. So I think there's a lot of residential parking that occurs on those side streets. That would be my comment.
Is there some that do not have any residential that potentially would be considered more important to have 2-hour parking for business usage?
Potentially Fifth. Yeah, Fifth Northwest. But that would be, or also for Sixth. But that would be it. But the thought is that the issue that we're trying to address we get numerous complaints from business owners that other business owners are allowing their patrons to park directly in front of their business. And the complaints seem to only be coming from Broadway Street businesses. So that's why we've only set out Broadway Street in this context.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My concern would be, right, I think currently part of the problem is employees parking on the street in front of their place of work for 8 hours. And my concern would be then where would they park? If they couldn't park around the corner, where are they going to park? So, and I've heard complaints as well, but it's just basically on Broadway, and it's mostly not patrons. It's mostly employees of other businesses who are there for like 6 to 8 hours parked in front of someone else's business. That's annoying to them.
Sorry, did I say patrons?
Yes.
Sorry, I meant employees. Yeah.
So if somebody goes around the corner and parks for 8 hours, are they now in front of another business, preventing parking in front of that business as well on those streets that you mentioned?
I'm just going through the different places. Potentially in front of the Centennial Building, school district building. There would also be, other than that, potentially someone might park in close proximity to the liquor store. But generally speaking, I guess Home Hardware, there might be someone who might park there. But that hasn't been the case to date.
Just wanted to make sure that that letter that was sent was considered. Then the next one would be, where does this, and maybe I just missed it, there's a lot of information here, this bylaw talk about moving oversized objects, such as, I know that we've asked for a building to be moved in the near future. And so does it say something, because it says with the CAO permission, I'm just wondering where it talks about that, or if that's a separate bylaw altogether.
Like they would be permitting to move oversight of a company.
Well, that would be sure.
Oh,
And that's a motor vehicle act.
oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay, thank you. And then 9.21, which I referred to earlier. What about sandwich boards? We had, or is that the public property bylaw instead that talks about the sandwich boards?
Yeah, so that falls under the use of public property bylaw.
Okay.
Yeah, so they would be able to, under permit, so when they get their business license, they have a permit to do so, provided they satisfy the conditions which are providing us with a certificate of insurance.
And the last one, 10.2. Somebody has it. Person must not park a motor vehicle on any highway or boulevard that is designed as a priority route. I just was looking for clarification on that. 10.2. Parking times. Oh, it says something to do with parking times, and I don't see times in here.
10.2?
Yeah.
So a person must not park a motor vehicle on any highway or boulevard that is designated as a priority route or snow removal route from November 15th to April 1st, effective annually, except to avoid conflict with traffic, to comply with the law or direction of peace officer, or while operating a municipal, provincial, federal exempt vehicle while performing their duties.
So then later it says something about except during a specific time, and then, but it doesn't say the time in here. So can they not park on that route ever? I'm just confused about that one, sorry.
Oh, okay, so a person who parks a motor vehicle on a priority route or snow removal during the times mentioned in section 10.2 contravenes this bylaw may be towed under authority of the CAO at the owner's expense. Yeah, so the time period is between November 15th and April 1st.
So you can't park there ever between those dates?
Yeah, because it's a snow route, right?
Oh,
So the whole idea is that what you don't want a vehicle parked in those areas where we're going to be clearing snow, because then we can't clear the snow effectively around them.
okay.
Realistically, like, no one's going to do anything unless we're really running into an issue where it's impeding snow. Snow removal, that is.
Thank you. That's it. That was a lot, but thank you.
Councillor.
Solve my own question there.
Is there any question?
No.
Thank you. That was it? Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through the mayor, just a quick question about communication to the public. Are we going to have a robust signage program in terms of you can't park your RV here, this is where you should go, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah. It's probably something that we're going to work on over time, because signs aren't cheap, so it's something we're going to have to build up on. But there'll be certain signs that we're going to have to get up right away. Other ones we'll work on over time. A lot of it's going to be public information, though. Public education.
Okay, thanks.
So just have a couple more. RVs, so if we do see one on Broadway, can we say you can get a couple options? You can take it to the community center or park. Yes, I'm not sure where else you could go.
Yeah, that was the area we were thinking would be the best spot for people to park with RVs, would be the recreation complex. It's not too far away and allows people the ability to walk through town.
Okay. Yeah, because in the summertime, it's when they park, it's usually in a bad spot.
Mm-hmm.
You got to really pull out sometimes right at a stop sign. You can't see around them.
Yeah. The key is going to be for that in particular, we're going to have to put up signage because, of course, we're not going to be able to communicate to those folks via the newsletter. Most likely, they're probably not going to the website to find out where they can park. So we'll definitely put up signs for that. But, a lot of this bylaw, too, is stuff that, can be enforced, but chances are staff are not going to be walking around and enforcing.
Right. So another one, our municipal boundaries. So say you're coming in from Burton, coming into town here. I know this would be a provincial highway, but out there it says slow to 50, coming into our community and drop down to 30. Is this something that was discussed is this something that we looked at?
Yeah, so we've had this discussion with Modi on numerous occasions, and unfortunately, they're not willing to move the 50 km/h speed limit further back, nor the 70 further back onto their highways, like further out of town. So technically, there's not enough time for somebody to slow down once they hit the 30 km/h zone in Broadway, where we currently have the sign, but we just keep on hoping that people will slow down.
You know, the other one, I know we've talked about it, but we don't have to, it's up to council what they think about it, but a stop sign right at the hut.
No, that is operational. That's not a council matter on that one.
Okay.
No.
It's just an idea.
Yeah, you can direct us to look into it more, but we'll come back at the same answer, which is it's not an effective way of slowing down traffic. You shouldn't put a stop sign. It's just going to create more problems. I personally think a stop sign would be good there, but the consensus keeps coming back from traffic engineers and those who are in the know saying that it's not the way to deal with it.
Bring back the old beach speed bumps.
Those things are horrid. If you want speed bumps, let's just put real ones in.
Any other questions? All in favor? Carried. Information items.
New
business.
Did I miss something?
Okay.
Oh, I was going right by the headstone. I'm sorry. Recommendations, separation motions, that the request to place an upright memorial at plot 22 in the old Catholic cemetery to be approved. I have a motion to bring that forward. Councillor McLaren Cole, seconded Councillor Edwards. Any questions on it? And if I read that correctly, that one was a request from a while back. Is that the one I read on? No.
It's got a long history, this.
Yeah.
The request is actually fairly recent, but it appears, it's kind of a strange one.
Okay. Any questions on it, Councillor Canoisen?
I don't know if this a question applies to the first motion or the second, but it may. The 500 fee that we're going to talk about in the next one, will it apply to this particular request, or because the request was made before the new fee was in place, it will be exempt from that? I mean, that's what you said.
Yeah, it's a good question. Unfortunately, because it has to be placed in the fees and charges by law, it's not something that will be applied to this one, which is a bit unfortunate because there is additional costs incurred by having to put in a stand-up marker.
Any other questions?
Wait a second. Why am I wrong?
Oh, I'm sorry.
You can't apply to install a memorial marker until there's been an interment. So by the time the bylaws changed, there isn't an interment, so they would make that application to do the interment, and that fee would be involved at that point.
I was wrong.
Wow, first time this year? Holy cow.
Any other questions? Okay. And council directs staff to amend the fees and charges bylaw for memorial marker installation to increase the cost of the care fund fee to $500 for all upright headstones approved by council. I have a motion to bring that forward. Councillor Edwards, seconded. Councillor Canoisen. Questions? Councillor Canoisen.
If we increase the fee, would the request to have an upstanding, freestanding, what do you call it?
Upright.
Upright he still have to come to council for approval, or would it save time by automatically being approved with the application with fee?
It would still need to come back to council. Yeah, the bylaw states that only council can authorize the upright marker. And I'll just preface that by saying that staff would recommend that it should be only something you consider in a cemetery that already has upright markers, because that just saves us having to pull out the weed eaters and all the other ones that are nice and flat.
Good. Any other questions? Is there a height restriction?
Just, like width and length.
Is that something we should, depends on the height, I'm sure the council.
You can do that case by case basis.
I don't think you want to see a 30-foot headstone.
Unless it's
For their purpose, I mean,
So 30, this week we're up to 33 feet, right?
can they go up that?
33 feet is the maximum height.
Letters, yeah, or building. That would be cool. It need to be engineered after a certain height.
Yeah. So you're right. It would have to, it's something to think about because there may be something that comes later. Any other questions? What about width? There's a width. Sorry, okay. Yeah. Any other further questions? All in favor? Carried. Information items. Recommendations that the items K1 to K5 be received for information and a motion to bring those information items forward. Councilor McLaren, seconded. Councilor Edwards. Any items council wishes to bring forward? Go ahead, Councilor McLaren.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just to note the RDCK board highlights, which is odd because they're from February, even though we just had our March meeting last week. If anybody wants to pick through those, I'm happy to talk offline or here publicly. And I think the more important one is K2, which is the Columbia River Treaty Local Governments Committee update from March. And I mean, I would suggest reading it all, but specifically tomorrow night, there's a virtual information session held by Minister Dix, who's the minister responsible for the treaty provincially. So I would highly encourage people to log into that for an hour tomorrow night at 6 p.m. You have to pre-register. So there's a link on here and on the Columbia River Treaty BC government website. So there's a lot of things in flux. Obviously, we're watching. Well, I've stopped watching the news because I care about my mental health, but there's a lot going on south of the border with our erstwhile partner in this kind of thing. So anyway, I highly encourage people to log into that tomorrow. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Kamice.
I just wanted to point out that in the UBCM dues K3, that down near the bottom it says, and I'll just let everybody can read the whole thing, but responsible conduct is a priority for local government. UBCM continues to work with the local government management association and provincial staff to support it. And I just thought that I'd bring that forward because that was one of the things that we were hoping to speak about at KBLG. It's nice to see that.
Others wish to bring forward? None? Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Any of the items? We want to K5 to be moved to action items? None? There's a motion. Questions from the press or public? So there's 5 guidelines. Interrupt you if you're going to follow them. Anybody from the crowd? Anybody online? Thank you. So notice of in camera, so, in accordance with sections 90.1, a part of council meeting may be closed to the public if subject matter being considered related to or is one or more of the following: the acquisition, disposition, or exploration of land or improvements. If the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality, and that the person other than council members and municipal officers be excluded from the meeting. So we will take a motion to go into Councilor Plan Cole, seconded Councilor Huff. So we will take a 5-minute break. And thank you for